So with the SONICWARE sample track finally heading into the hands of backers, I now have something new to talk about, the SONICWARE Liven Lofi-12. So for the past year or so, a completely separate dev team at SONICWARE has been working on the new Liven sampler. This is a very different beast to the sample track. It's built on the groundwork done on the XFM, so if you're familiar with the way that's laid out, you'll be very at home here. It's got the same 4-track layout and the same sequencing options as you've got on the XFM. But this time the machine is sample based, and not only that, we can sample directly into the machine using the line-in. There's 128 slots for samples that are either going to be 2 or 4 seconds long, depending if you choose 12 or 24 kHz sampling. So it sounds lovely and lo-fi. So let's just scratch the surface and see what this is capable of. So here we go, here's the Liven Lofi-12. It's laid out exactly the same way as all the other Livens in terms of where its knobs and displays and sockets and everything are. But obviously you've got this completely different colour scheme. It comes with an overlay for deep sample editing, but we won't be covering that in this because we have a quick sample option as well, so we don't need to use it. This is a deeper sample editing level where we can set up things like loop points, but we don't need it today. So let's get a drum break recorded into this on track 1. So this is my chosen sample source for our drum break. Just to prove how long it's been since I've started making music, I have sample CDs in the attic that not only work as a CD-ROM, but also have what's called a Red Book audio section on them, which means they'll play in a standard CD player, like this incredibly high quality Dixon own brand portable CD player. This has a line out on the side, which is going to go into the line in on the Liven, and we're just going to play it like a normal audio recording and just sample the audio straight off. So I've got my CD player hooked up, as you can see, it's going into the line in. The way the quick sampling option works on here is that we just load up a sound that we want to overwrite, and it's destructive, so it saves directly over the top of those factory sounds, so be careful to pick something blank if you don't want to overwrite the internal sounds. So there's all these presets built in, different instruments and loops and drums, so I'm just going to go right to the end on banks because they're empty by default, and select the first sound, which is empty. There's some settings here for the quick sampling, so function settings, we can choose the automatic level it detects when it starts recording. We can turn that off if we want to, and just hit record manually, but it's not a bad idea to have that on because it detects the start of your sound and it keeps the recording clean. And then we have sampling frequency. 12 kHz is a 4-second sample max, and 24 kHz is a 2-second sample max. We need a drum break, so I'm going to make it quite long. So I'm going to leave it at 12. So all we need to do, we've selected the sound we want to overwrite, so I'm just going to hit function and the sampling here. And that is going to go into a monitoring mode where we can press play and we can see the volume of the incoming signal on these LEDs. But it's actually the next drum break I want to record. So I'm going to hit record. It's now waiting to hit that signal. Once we've done that, we can play it on the keys. If we're happy with it, we can press OK, and it'll ask us if we want to save. We press OK again, and that's now overwritten that bank sound that we had here. So I'm just going to program in a long note using the tied node function. I'm going to hit record. So when these octave buttons are off, this C will play exactly at the pitch that we recorded it at, and we can play up and down the keys. It's the same with the instruments if we go to an instrument. So they're just single samples, and they're played slower and faster up and down the keyboard to get different pitches, and that's the same as what's happening with our drums. There's no difference between playing back drums and playing instrument sampled sound. So I know from reading the inlay on the back of that CD that this is a 75 BPM drum loop, so if we press play now, it's not going to line up with our tempo, so we need to adjust that here. So we need to change this to 75. We can change the tempo in a coarse manner using this knob, and then when that's on the display we can lower it using the value knob, like a fine adjustment. So now it should play in a loop. reduce the bass in that a bit because it's a bit kind of thumpy in the bottom end. So I'm going to turn the filter on. We've got lots of different filter types to choose from, low pass, high pass and band pass with different mini envelopes. So I'm going to select high pass. I'm going to turn the cut off down. I'm going to turn the envelope off because it's on a little bit. And then a resonance I'm going to adjust as well. So that's much more what we want. And then I'm going to turn the level up here. To get a bit more crunch as well, we can turn on the 12-bit mode. So this lowers the sampling bit depth from 16 to 12. Just hit function and this key here, that turns on 12-bit. So it degrades it a little bit more. So that's basically like the lowest sound quality you're going to get out of the Liven without pitching stuff down. Then I'm going to save that into a pattern. So there we go, that's our drum break sorted. Another good source of material is just to record stuff off your phone. So I've got my work phone here that has a headphone socket on it. You may need to get an adapter obviously, but you can just record chunks of audio and then sample that in to the Liven. There are also apps available for Android and iOS that enable you to just use the microphone. So the microphone will be directly routed to the headphone socket, so you can just hook that up and record audio directly into the Liven. But I'm not going to do that right now. So I've got this bit of audio here that I recorded in town today. It's just a bit of noise, like a lorry unloading its load. There's a sort of slightly percussive kind of bang sound in the middle that I quite like the sound of. So I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to go and find a sound that's not been used. This time it will be the second sound in that same bank. Sampling, and then press record. There we go. Stop, and I can get rid of it. And then we're going to save that as we did before. So this time, to make it a little bit longer, we're going to play it down a little bit. So I'll play a little bit slower. We want the length of the pattern to go up a little bit to accommodate that longer sample. So I'm going to go to length and change the step count to 32. So now this pattern, or this track, is 32 steps long. So I can hit record and put a long note in that spans over 2 bars. So we got that, it just cuts out just before the end of the beat. Because at that point, our 4 seconds are up. So I'm going to filter that the same as before with a different filter. Bit of band pass. So that's just taken away a few of those low frequencies, enabling it to sit at the higher end of the spectrum and leave room for the drum break. So we could sample an instrument at this point, but I really like one of the presets, so I'm just going to pick that. There's a piano sound here, not the one that I made, one of the other sound designers. It's that. So it's like some sort of piano chord, not quite sure what it is. I'm just going to pitch that down an octave to here. And again, I'm going to add a bit of filtering, a bit of high pass, lower the cutoff, and tweak the resonance a bit. Actually, I'm just going to change the length of the pattern. Again, this track can be a different length, so this one's going to be 64. So I'm just going to turn on the metronome, bit of pre-count, and then we'll be able to play that in. Something like that. Now within the Liven's reverb section, there's also some things that we can use to mess up the sound and make it sound like tape and vinyl. I'm not actually going to use it on here, but it's worth demonstrating. Those are good ways to mess up the sound. So obviously you can hear the sort of vinyl crackle here, but I'm just going to go back to the reverb I did have selected, which is tunnel, because there's a different trick I want to show you. So this is quite clean. And it's not exactly screaming lo-fi at me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the LFO to mess it up. I'm going to change the shape to random. I'm going to turn the rate way up, like right to the top, and then we can introduce a bit of pitch, which is going to be really, really messed up at anything at the most subtle value. So just maybe 2 out of 127. Just gives it that little bit of wobbliness, like it's recorded onto a bad tape. So that's the kind of thing we're looking for. So for the remaining track, I'm going to record a bass line in. I'm going to do the same thing as did before, make the track nice and long. The bass sound I like is in the first bank. The last sound is this one. I'm going to pitch that down to here. Then I'm going to add a chorus. So each of the tracks on the Lo-Fi 12 has its own effects section. We can even modulate the knobs for the effects section to get things changing over time. So it essentially has 5 effects slots, 1 per track that's selectable from lots of different types like delay and a chorus and that kind of thing, and then a master reverb. So I'm going to turn on the effects here, turn it to chorus, and I'm going to turn the chorus amount way up, and then a middling amount of modulation somewhere around here. Like that. And then I'm going to record that in like we did before. So I'm also going to add a little bit of low pass filter to that because I also want to play it in real time as a lead. So I'm going to go to filter, turn low pass on, and then tweak in a bit of cut off from resonance on this too. So then I'm going to pitch it up a few octaves, not that far, so there, and then I'm going to dial a little bit of the envelope depth. Just to get a bit of subtle movement to it, and I quite like the idea of adding a bit of wonk like we did before, so let's go for random rate. There we go, and we can turn up the amount of reverb we've got on this too, so I'm going to make it quite heavy-handed. So there we go, nice long ringing tail on the reverb, so we can play everything we've done and then play over the top with the lead that's using the same sound as the bass. So there we go, we've built up a complete track just using sounds that were sampled and a few presets. Obviously you can go wild and sample all your own stuff into this and just have loads of fun. So I hope you've learned a little bit something about how to make lo-fi music and also how the Lo-Fi 12 works. And thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.